Welcome, everyone. I am live, and if you're watching this, you're live too, which is a good place to start. So we're both live here, talking about effortless mindfulness, or so far I'm talking about it, and you're maybe typing about it. I'm seeing some people joining. This is wonderful. If you want to say where you're from, I may mention that as well. So we have Dawn from Ontario joining us here, and I'll just let you all come aboard as we go into this evening of practicing effortless mindfulness. So I thought that we would focus on one of the simplest practices that is a direct introduction into your true nature, and then discuss some of the pitfalls and some of the transitions as the unfolding happens. So let me address one thing that seems to have been coming up a lot in classes and courses that I'm teaching, is the process or the transition from conceptual thinking to not knowing, back to conceptual thinking, to not knowing, back to conceptual thinking, to not knowing, to the awareness that's alert and not knowing, that knows that it's alert and is taking in everything without labeling, without judging, without analyzing or particularizing, and yet it sees panoramically, connected, almost begins to be connected for some more. Now, this is a radical next stage of evolution, which we're often calling awakening. Awakening from a very strong habit of thought-based knowing, a sense of this everyday mind, which is looping and creating a little sense of a mini me in our heads or in our thought and emotion. So when I say thought, I also mean thought and emotion. So thought and emotion go together. So for some, it's very much looking out from behind your eyes, as if you're located in this head, and this is why this circular motion is often used to describe it. But it can be emotional as well. It's basically in this cloud of fogginess that is delusional or confusion or self-representational feeling of being a separate self that's not connected with everyone and everything. So there's a bunch of ways that many of you have played with, and some pointers work better than others. But as you do this, just to say, it is simple but not easy. The habit is so strong of the creation of the managing system, of the ego managers, of the self-center, and of the protectors and the whole ego defenses and the security system of that are trying to protect the most vulnerable parts of us. However, shifting out of the thinking is not enough. So shifting into the next level from everyday mind to subtle mind, which is a mindful witness, where you can then see or observe that you're not your thoughts from a point of view that is a mindful, is a half step, dropping into your body, into this sense of subtle body, where you can do any of these preliminary practices such as chanting and yoga and feeling of mantra or sauna or exercise, or where you feel, or walking in nature often will connect you, or doing a mindful witness, or just feeling like you can open to the space in the room. Yeah? Just try that for 1 second. Feel as if the awareness is identified and then opens. So the awareness is now focused on contentless space, and there's a sense of non-looking to thought or to objects. Yeah? And when there's no object, there starts to be less subject. And the mind is clarified, or begins to be, but you may pop right back to orient. The key is that many people are asking is, how can I know that I'm not knowing? How can I know that awareness is knowing? Because I keep checking back to see or to understand how I can be knowing from awareness. So this is the key, is that the transition is conceptual knowing to subtle body or mind to spacious awareness or not knowing. And then if you only stop there, just by stepping out of thought, you're going to have to go back to thought. You're going to have to go back to ego function in order to work, to know and to do. So this just full not knowing that then is alert, and then just lets go into a not knowing that knows. That may be a heart knowing, it may be an embodied knowing, it may be a spacious witness. But just that knowing you know through the new knowing. So the new knowing that doesn't use concepts kind of has to know that it's not using thought, and then it's like, yeah, So this opening, and then not knowing, which is the unhooking to make sure you're not referencing, then the space or the interior. Some people are more easily go inside, some go outside. And then that this clarity, just a little feeling, even for a moment or two, 20 seconds, you start to realize there's a system of functioning, of interconnectedness, of energy that is known like it when you're in a flow state or you're in the zone. And it's really just tuning in. And of course, effortless mindfulness takes practice. So the effortlessness is not a small efforts many times. That is what it is. It's small efforts many times to discover that which is effortless and train to remain and lose it and learn to return and familiarize. So the Tibetan word for meditation is often translated as familiarize. Yeah? So people are joining. So I'm just doing a little intro talk here while people are jumping on board. From Kingman, Arizona, and the wilds of Bostonia, we have one person who says that's where they're living. Brooklyn is in the house. We've got Auburn, California, and so let's answer one question here. So this is a very good one because it's a classic. Mike Healy asks, my understanding of awareness is that it just is. No center, borderless, etc. So why do you keep saying awareness moves from various parts of the body, eyes, throats, etc.? So this is the key, that if awareness is centerless. It's not just centerless, it's also here and everywhere and connected. Now, it's often thought of when it's first discovered as passive, or as if you surrender or recognize it. And that's the first feeling, and often the definition of awareness is the recognition of spacious awareness, which is boundless, timeless, contentless. But who's recognizing it? And so the next move or the next transition is often called recognition of that, and then realization, which is that this awareness is the ground of being from which you now can look, focus, change your awareness, be aware of your foot. And now what's aware is no longer the doer or the efforter or attention used by the small mind, but is this form, is emptiness. Emptiness is awake, centerless, and boundless. But now, as emptiness is form, there is ability to live from awareness that is showing up as appearances and form and thoughts, without going back to make a new dualism, as if there's awareness that's boundless and then anything that's focused or local is not awareness, it's being identified or attached. So it's the bringing together of the two, and that's often the first discovery, is the boundless, no center, all pervasive, spacious awareness. But as we go further, and these fuller maps that we're exploring, you'll see that it's not only formless, but it is this dynamic, energetic aliveness that is none other than, is not a second thing, that the connection with everything, the arising, is nothing, oneness, and manyness, interconnected, everywhere, nowhere, and here. So this is the unfolding of that initial recognition of pure awareness that is then dynamically like the quantum field that appears as waves and particles made of that. So this is the uniqueness of this map, which we're exploring, which goes from everyday mind to either subtle mind as a mindful witness, or subtle body as a dropped into knowing your body from within, to pure awareness, no center, boundless, timeless field. Then you can be aware from that, back of it, from it, looking as if you're the sky, looking at clouds or birds of sensation. But then the discovery is that the awareness is already dynamically alive in its dimension as appearance and energy, Shakti and Shiva, Yang and Yin, appearance and emptiness, energetic aliveness, which is what allows us to be embodied and interconnected and dynamically blissful and enjoying this open-heartedness. So let's explore tonight some more fun stuff here, particularly this one inquiry, which I think, and then let's explore from here what it is that's recognized and realized. Okay, so you may not have ever believed this would be happening on Facebook Live, but here we go. So you're going to need to all these tools of unhooking and going in, of opening and going out, of turning around and going back. is really just about awareness, recognizing itself, and then recognizing itself as these qualities of moment to moment appearance and interconnected interdependence. Yeah. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to simply start with using our mind and concepts by understanding this inquiry, this koan really. I just talked to some people in Zen, and they in Boulder, Colorado, and they were talking about how similar these pointers are to koans. So here it is. What's here now when there's no problem to solve? So understanding it with your mind, what's here now when there's no problem to solve? Then unhooking awareness and have it drop or look back or open to look to itself, to let go of the problem solver on the level of identity and just be not just spaced out or zoned out or calm, but see what it is. And then you can type afterwards. So right now, we're going to take a little bit of exploration, and then you can type some answers. So just be curious, eyes open or closed. Here we go. What's this? What's here, just now, when there's no problem to solve? Notice the absence. What was here that's not? The absence of thought, particularly in patterns and parts. And then just feel the qualities and then feel the knowing of the space, the qualities, the aliveness, sensation, thought moving, energy, the quality of what's knowing without going to thought. What's aware now when you don't go to thought? What's that feel like? Is that so? Yeah, so you feel that, and you can, even now as you move toward typing or take a little deeper breath in, and let it out. Feel this simple animal body and the space around. Just notice that not knowing that knows quality. And you don't go to thought to know it. So that you're knowing, and that you're knowing that knowing knows it knows. That's sentience. Primordially preconceptual and transconceptual as wisdom, discriminating wisdom that could use thought, could move your hand, but just feel that powerful, simple feeling of just being. and the knowing. And inequalities are second. So really it's the knowing, it's the emptiness and the clarity, and then the interconnected dynamic energy, and then the interconnection, loving being, presence, the energy from self-essence to self, from no self to dynamic aliveness, from the ultimate level to the relative. So what do you know? Notice. So I'm getting a few typers here. Completion, spaciousness, here, calm, pure joy, so tender, embracing. There's a bunch of them here, so a lot of comments about feeling sweet, awareness. So it's just that something that beyond words, by not going to peace, openness, spaciousness, knowing, not from a mental space, but from my whole body, is this knowingness. So again, it's not right and wrong. The mind is right and wrong. The mind, this is the key point of the whole evening. If you go to the mind for a second opinion, you have now surrendered and gone to the other side. You are now back in the territory where you can't know. So as soon as you use the old way of understanding and even say, I'm getting it or I'm not getting it, if you say, oh, I think I was getting it, but now I think I'm not getting it, you're correct. Because if you are forming an I that is trying to use thought to understand or to confirm, it can't work. It doesn't work. Therefore, the gap and the new feeling. And it's a process. It's a huge long-term habit of knowing most things through thought and analysis. This is something like riding a bicycle, where you can think about it, but you've got to feel it. And it'll take what it takes for everyone. And the frustration is part of it. The doubt, the judgment is all part of system one. When you're doubting, when you're frustrated, when you feel you're not getting it, all that says is, oh, I'm still in system one. So let me try to unhook or drop or inquire, whatever way works. And there's many different ways that work, and some don't. But it's really an interest or a curiosity that there is something here that is knowing, that at first is just like a deer coming. If you're sitting in the forest and a deer just comes after hours of sitting and looking at nature, and it just peeks its head around the corner, and there it is, and looks at you, and then it goes. So it's just this willingness to enter this avenue, which may be new, or but all new things, all learning takes some 2 steps forward, 3 steps back kind of process, and a disorientation before a reorientation. So the disorientation will take you back to the old orientation, and the old orientation is, well, this is not good. I'm not getting it, because the I that forms can't get it, and it doesn't know, so it's a little feeling like a beginner, which is good because it's beginner's mind, and the not knowing actually is not knowing. And then The new knowing often comes in glimpses. And that's kind of the unfolding and the willingness to discover the effortlessness that once it's met, it's not like you get it, it's like it gets you. And then just different ways of sustaining that awareness that's aware of energy and then is aware of your breath. Yeah. So let's hear maybe some comments, questions. We have a whole bunch of people from all over, so I'm sorry if I'm not going to get to all of them, but I'll try to read some comments. And also, open awareness, inherently at peace, dropping into what is, joining the flow. This one says, I can describe it. Like a pulsing, curious awe. And then, I cannot describe it. And then someone says blank. So the blank is the gap. It's the middle space that has no content. And it's blank because it's not active, and yet it's not yet dynamic. It's not yet, it doesn't have clarity. It has some emptiness or absence of conceptual, like floating, but like floating in the ocean. At first it's wet, but then the floating requires just another level of letting go that will be discovered. So here's the main question that I'm trying to address tonight, and I hope I can answer it for everyone. How do you know if you're unhooked without using your mind? Okay, so this is a question that continually comes up. And this is one of the reasons it's called effortless mindfulness, because with deliberate mindfulness or with deliberate learning, you check with your mind. You know, the word know is connected to conceptual thinking. How do I know? I need to check with my small mind to know that I know. I can't know without doing that. So it's like riding a bicycle. If you're riding a bicycle and you're in the flow, you can be talking to your friend next to you while you're riding. You can be looking at the beautiful nature. You can be just enjoying, and you're balancing. You're riding without mentally knowing. If you're typing, at first you learn the keys. Then, once you're typing, you know it by heart. So it's the first willingness to go through some of this little deconstructing, unhooking, but it's only the knowing by heart or the feeling more than knowing. So the word feeling may be better. It's palpable. It's not your thought that knows. It's not exactly your sensation, but it is palpable. Like, how do you know you're riding a bicycle? You know by feel. How do you know you're balanced? So it's a new kind of knowing that is where you have to look to know you know. And when you know, the new knowing knows, it just is. It just, yes. That's how it answers. Am I aware? Now, if you don't go up to thought, am I aware from awareness? Now, that thought may even cross your mind. Am I aware from awareness? So you let it go. If you get on the train, I'm not sure. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. Oh, I think I was, but now I'm not. But if you let that thought go, I better check. Am I aware from awareness? And now feel back. And the answer is not a word or a concept or a strong like woohoo, yeah, like energy or fireworks, or it's a subtle like balancing. It's just, yeah, oh, this is it, because the alertness knows it's alert. There's a potential to know, and there's a feeling that you could respond. Maybe that's one of the keys. You're feeling like you could, but you don't have to think about it. Yeah. So I think that's an attempt to use words to talk about how you don't have to use words to know. But every time I use words and all the communication, I'm talking through your thinking mind to your true nature, or your no self, or your no self, to the awakeness that knows and is being awakened through being pointed to. So the words, one word or short words, what's here now when there's no problem to solve, is meant to go, what's here now when the problem is solved, when there's no problem to solve, and then the pointer has you rest back and down until that which is aware will know itself. So it's paradoxical. You can only understand initially like a impressionistic map. So the reason to give just a little impressionistic map is really a lot of it's to say what you don't need to know, what you don't need to do, what's important to unlearn or not look for. That's kind of the map. Like, the things you've been spending so much time, don't do those. Like, that's not where it is. Like, the more you do them, it's okay for a while, but drop them all. And now let yourself realize that you can let go and be aware from that which is already aware. So notice that awareness that's both inside and out, just without even knowing how you're doing. And notice that awareness is aware of space inside and out, and from space that's aware. And it's aware of energy inside and out. And then just notice your breath happening by itself. From the awareness, from the simultaneous energy dynamic, and the simplicity of here. Awareness happening by itself, breath happening by itself, aliveness happening by itself. Just those three. Awake space, energy that forms and informs, and the quality of relative matter and relative conventional reality that's infused with awareness and with this dynamic presence. Yeah, so we got that going for us. So let's see what else we have here. I'm going to jump back in. Would you interpret getting into awake awareness as getting conscious of the unconscious, or is it much more than this? It's different. So the unconscious is contents of consciousness, and thinking is contents of consciousness. So that's more of a psychological model of the psyche. Those are, in this model, part of the subtle mind and subtle body. So this is another category altogether, which most of the wisdom traditions have it. The Tao in Advaita Vedanta, it's called Turiya. And then you awaken and it's Turiyatita. It's called Rigpa in Tibetan Buddhism. It's called the unborn mind, or Buddha mind, or ordinary mind. It's called spirit, awake, incarnational. It's called the heart of hearts in Sufism. So it's a dimension of subtlest dimension of consciousness that's already here, that's inherent within everything. It's invisible and intelligent, and yet can, by feel, be known. It's just that it hasn't been on our map. So I've found that, within a short time, if it's really about finding the door that matches you. And once the door, there's, I'd say, like 30 to 50 good doors that work pretty well. And when I find the match, or when people find their own match, if you're willing to stay with it, it doesn't take much time compared to almost every other practice to just shift into that, because it's already here. Yeah. So that is so this one, Marge from Yonkers says, for me, knowing seems more like a welcoming of what's familiar, but has no conceptual basis. Beautiful. That's beautiful. Put it in your own language and what it feels like, because it's never going to be precise. We're not looking for definitions or descriptions that match. We're looking for imperfect expression and pointers that go beyond. Would you say that part of what we're attempting to do is step out of our reactivity to the stream of commentary and into our self that is already effortlessly interacting with life? Yeah, so step out of our reactivity and stream of commentary and into the self. See, the interesting thing is two different systems. We call it no self, and another system calls it self. They're with a big S, and they're both, I can use either language, as long as the first small self is the no self, and then there isn't a formation of a new small self, but there is a living person that is part of the bigger self. So yes, effortlessly interacting with life. But then there's a bringing together of the new operating system of open-hearted awareness that then can live from this imperfect, bumbling personality, but it's what's dancing with the form, and from the form, from your personality and your ego functions, there's interconnection. You don't just go and discover the pure awareness as a meditation state and then come back to be a spiritual ego. There's a real change. Okay, here's Andy Pace from England. Hi, Locke. What about problem solving? Would you say open-hearted awareness intuitively knows how to problem solve and respond appropriately in each situation? So yeah, first problem. So when I say what's here when there's no problem to solve, it's not about everyday problems. This is about the problem solver who's trying to solve this one problem about what am I going to do? How am I going to get satisfied? How am I going to protect myself? But it's talking about the small sense of self that it thinks it's you more than you think it's it. That's the problem. It's not that you think you're it, you're the small self. Is that the small self thinks it's you and it's running the show. So when that pin is unplugged by saying you don't have to do this problem solving job, then what shows up is what's been behind this all along, what's this far away. So then when you do discover this awareness that's embodied and these qualities begin to show up, and then the open-hearted awareness is really the mixing of what's called bodhicitta or prajna, or the eye of the heart. This intelligence, heart-mind, is able to integrate and begins to use this intelligence, which is bigger than your information in your brain, is more picking up on simultaneous mind, these levels of intelligence that are making connections like a continuous intuition. So then, Andy, you begin to solve problems and respond to each situation, and you do the best you can, and stuff will work out and stuff won't work out, and you'll respond to that problem if it didn't work out. So it's not like magically everything's perfect and you win the lottery and you can all of a sudden play a concert piano and everyone smiles and things go well. It's not that. It's that you can actually show up in the midst of struggle, in the midst of difficult life and this world, which is, has a great deal of suffering, and you can meet it more compassionately with this strength of courage that's vulnerable. So you actually become more vulnerable and hopefully at the same time more courageous. Sometimes one goes a little bit before the other, but the vulnerability to be aware self to self, and then self to other, and then also to receive other to self, and to feel compassion, which starts with empathy, but then if you don't go to this awakened consciousness and compassion, you'll go to empathetic distress or you'll shut down. This is actually the new research. They're showing that there's if you don't feel and you're not empathetic, then you walk around like a anxious or depressed or dissociated person. If you do feel, as many of us do, a lot about what's happening, you can either go to empathetic distress, which is overwhelm or anxiety or hopelessness, other attitudes like that, because you literally feel that your subtle body is taking on all of this energy. Or you go to this compassion, open-hearted awareness. So the awareness that is connected to everyone and everything and is dynamically not separate, and realizes that the small sense of self doesn't have to fix it and doesn't have to not feel, becomes possible. That you can bear what seemed to be unbearable, and you're actually able to respond rather than react. With this just, kind of luscious, loving, but compassion has pain. It's a pain that is like growing pains. It's and there's ups and downs, but there's support is where this is going. It's not going toward just the first step, which is step out of your mind, get some relief, stress management, calm, and then go back to work with a more calm ego. That's the difference here with this non-dual insight or effortless mindfulness, is we're going into this new operating system of awake awareness, then embodied, and then open-hearted, with the ground of being this awareness, that is able to feel this precious human birth and then respond in a way that you really kind of come home to who you've always been, and it's just remarkable. So this process is to kind of unplug or untie these knots, the knot of everyday mind, the knot of the meditator, or the knot of calm abiding, and then the knot of pure awareness, which is transcendent only, and the transcendent witness, and then come into the simultaneous mind and feel this dynamic, multidimensional perception of life and emotion and energetic fields and all sorts of levels of interplay. And then to feel the open-hearted contact from the source to feel a ground and flowering. So here's another great question that is one of the classics. So the first one that I wanted to make sure I addressed was, how can you know without going back to your mind? So hopefully I'm starting to address that. And here's one of the other ones. What are good ideas for maintaining effortless mindfulness? Should one check in for short times throughout the day or allow these times to gradually expand? And, a version of that is that, how, what do I do now? What's next? That kind of, so what's next is now. What's next is stay with the little small glimpses and the small steps, even though they seem small, and as soon as you come back to the everyday mind or the spiritual ego or the grasping nature of the spiritual superego or the meditator, you want more meditation, you want more benefits. This is normal. That's part of that subtle system of and it's just willingness to be simple, to trust that it's kind of like that. It's one drop at a time. And exactly as you say, check in short times, small glimpses throughout the day, allow these times to gradually expand, feel the familiarity, the familiarization with being able to sit from here, being able to walk from here, being able to look out the window during work from here, feel one breath happening by itself from here. And what you're doing is you're rewiring your brain to, and your whole nervous system to operate from a different place by small glimpses, because you can't force it. You can't use effortful or deliberate long-term practice to get this. Some people who do super long-term practice, this will arise. But in this direct practice, it's recognizing, realizing that this is who I am. So that's important, is that the awareness is what's aware. And then the marinating, or the dynamic energy, which is included. And then hanging out and beginning to start to type and walk and then lose it. And then my big phrase is, no big surprise, just re-recognize. So I'm back in my mind. Who would have thunk it? Let's see, I've been doing this for a lot of years. I guess that makes sense. I'm not knowing it. I'm not getting it. Yeah, well, this is natural, simple, but not easy. It's a direct recognition, gradual unfolding. So the willingness to just the first taste of small glimpses that people are reporting is, and the willingness to see that many people are reporting that this is changing their lives. I mean, I'm obviously hearing from hundreds all the time. And it's the hope, I think, for the consciousness and for our compassionate activity in the world. So would anybody like to ask another question? There's a bunch here, but is anybody coming? Okay, here's one from Rania. Do you have to move into spacious awareness before you can move into embodied awareness? Okay, so you can move from everyday mind to embodied awareness, to spacious awareness, to embodied awareness. The first embodied awareness, this is why it often gets confusing for people. It's like, well, I'm not in my thought, so I'm in my subtle energy. But in order to step all the way out, you can feel like you're going outward. Some people, in many ways, there's two styles. One is to go out first, and one is to go in. And when you go in, you can go all the way in to like the atom, the space in the atom, which will then take you to the space all around. And initially, it's not as important to feel the orientation, spaciousness, as much as it is to be aware from non-thought based awareness. So that's the most important. There's different ways to feel that, and sometimes if you feel that, you still may feel you're still contained in this energetic body, but if you stay with that, it'll open up. So that's really important. There tends to be internal type people who like to go in, drop down, and others who go out, external, open. But to distinguish between just coming into your subtle body as different than when you've discovered the awakeness that knows it's not different than the aliveness inside and out. And then there's this interconnected feeling of embodied awareness. You're knowing your body from within rather than as an object. So that's a great question. Let's see what we have here. So we have one question. Yeah, so here's a simple one. I'll just do it simply. What's the difference between awareness and consciousness? So people use it in different ways. I wrote a chapter in my book about it, which is kind of teases it apart. So I'll give you the simple way I'm using it is that awareness has no contents. It's like space. And consciousness is its dancing appearance that appears as movement and then forms into patterns. So awareness is always the same, like the space within an atom, and then atoms are made of awareness and they form into hearing consciousness, human consciousness, plant consciousness. So they're still primarily awareness, but now they're patterning and forming into relative patterns. But the key is to still feel the ground, which is awareness, and not separate awareness and consciousness ultimately, so that you can feel this dynamic human life, which is infused with and grounded in really this intelligence that's remarkable to know. Okay, I'll take another look here. Yes, a lot of people reporting a lot of amazing things. Some questions. There's a question about if this is so natural, why don't we know it? And that's the thing, the willingness to really see that in ancient cultures and contemplative sciences, and that those who reported being most happy, most free, have all spoken of this. And though they've done different practices to recognize it, most of the wise gals and wise guys have always said, well, but now that I've done these practices, I know even more clearly that it's always been here and it's who I've always been. And so in this kind of contemporary way, we're discovering ways to learn and ways to embody that are just like we've developed so many other things. We're taking ancient truths and we're using contemporary styles of learning to discover something without having to do something just because it's been done that way before. We're learning the principles, kind of untying the knots, and discovering what the essence is, and the roadmaps and the eddies that you can get caught in along the way. So a simple version of one of the Kagyu traditions says that that the reason we don't recognize it is that it's so close that we can't see it. Yeah. So it's literally that we're looking out from our minds outward to our thought, from our thought, and we have to back it up. That's why a lot of our practices, we're backing it up, unhooking, and just returning. But the key is not to get stuck in just the first effects of relaxation, relief, stress management, peace, but to really then see that there's a new operating system, a new embodiment, a new way of being and seeing, and to check with the new knowing that this is what's actually online for at least a few seconds, a few minutes, and then eventually it becomes the new normal. And you start to feel like nails on a chalkboard when you're out of it, or when you're caught in a part. And then you, as we'll see in those who are taking this course, will start to realize that when you get caught back, you'll start to feel that part go back and sit in the seat of the self, and then you stay home in the heart, or in the spacious, loving heart, and you start to love it and meet it from rather than either or, rather than either I'm the part or I'm open-hearted awareness, but now they're both here. So the loving awareness starts to communicate with the part that says, I'm not getting it. Okay, sweetheart, I hear you. Well, this isn't going to work so well. I mean, other people seem to be getting it so much faster, and I don't know. I'm just, there's other things to do. Yeah, okay. Do they bring you love and joy? Oh, no. Okay, well, tell me what does. Well, and then there's this kind of meeting of the relative and the ultimate, of the open-heartedness and these parts of ourselves that have been trying hard to be the manager, trying to be the self, trying to protect these wounded parts, which then can be loved back to health, which is just so liberating, of so much energy. So I'm so happy that all of you joined. We have people from all over Europe and West Coast, South, Midwest, Canada, and So I thank you so much for all joining each other, and feel a lot of gratitude for the willingness for you to be willing to unlearn enough to let go of that worrying mind, of that striving to even know this material, and be willing to not only let go, but discover and be this awareness for small glimpses until you really realize this, the preciousness of this human birth. So thank you all for joining together and bringing a lot of love and curiosity. And I hope to see you all very soon. So take care.